Hang with me for a second because we have a news alert with Becky Quick, who joins us now, I believe, on the phone. Hey, Bex, what do you got?
Hey, Scott. I just got off the phone with Warren Buffett, and he just added a little clarity to the news release that both CSX and Burlington Northern put out on Friday afternoon. In it, they talked about how they're linking up. They've got a partnership that they can work together to make sure that freight can make it all the way from the east to the west coast, and that there's this cooperation between them. Clarity to add to this is that Berkshire Hathaway is not in the market to buy a train company right now. That is what I heard from Mr. Buffett himself. He said that back on August 3rd, he and Greg Abel met with Joe Henricks, who is the CEO of CSX. They met in Omaha alone in his office, no advisors or anybody else on this. They talked through all of it, and Buffett and Abel made clear at that point that they were not going to be making a bid for CSX, but they really thought there was a lot that they could do to cooperate and work together and come up with those same synergies that there would be even if the two companies were combined. Now, that letter that you saw on Friday, the press release that was put out, kind of detailed how they can do that partnership together, what they're planning on doing. And Buffett tells me that, by the way, the huge advantage here is that BNSF has unlimited resources to spend on anything that they think makes sense. So this is really a way to get freight across the country for their customers without having any of the slowdowns or shutdowns or needing to take 2 to 3 days to transfer over to another train line, that they would be working this out, but without actually putting a deal on the table. And that's important because if you've been watching CSX shares over the last couple of months, as bankers have talked about the potential for a deal, well, you've seen those shares really pick up a huge amount. This is a partnership that would get at that without paying that premium to do it. But the two companies seriously have a lot that they can do together. Buffett also told me that, by the way, it's not just CSX. They're not in the market to bid for any train company at this point. There have been some speculation that maybe they would put out a competing bid against Union Pacific for the other railroads. But that's not in the cards at this point either. So just some important context to add to a developing story that's been out there for a couple of months and that we've seen along the way. And it's probably worth paying attention to all of those train shares today.
Well, we continue to follow his every move. Obviously, Becky, you've been at the forefront of this from the very beginning. Did he give you any indication broadly, or did you take anything away from your conversation about this particular deal on how he views the current market environment at all?
Just the current market environment for the train stocks? I mean, look, obviously they've run up a lot. He didn't say anything specifically about it, but I would take away from it that, yeah, if you're an investor who's getting into these stocks because you think there's going to be a big deal that happens, that's not the case.
Yeah.
There's a partnership that could be had. I don't know if you guys remember, just like a week ago, the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, was on Walk on the Street, and he was talking about some of these things. David Faber asked him about the potential for the deal, if the Trump administration would be in favor of that. And he said he was going to stay out of it. It wasn't his view to get things done, but even Howard Lutnick looked at it and said, look, there are certainly synergies that could be out there, but we don't care if it gets done through a merger or if it gets done through a cooperation between the two companies. It was very eerie. What he was talking about is very similar to what these two companies just announced on Friday.
Yeah,
because there are still questions as to whether the Trump administration would even approve a combination of these companies. We'll see. The Transportation Service Board would be the one who would okay all of those things. But if the market is looking for another bidder to come in over Union Pacific or another big bid to go through with CSX, it's not going to come from Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe the market, well, certainly, and looking at the price action as you were delivering this report, which is clearly moving CSX, maybe the market's doubtful of that as well, of somebody else maybe entertaining this. Becky, thank you so much for the reporting and for calling in to the show. But Mike, I'll get your comment here as well as you know Buffett and Co.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the resistance to kind of throwing more capital in this direction. I'm sure they feel as if BNSF is great exposure to the overall U.S. economy and any efficiencies you can get with this sort of joint cooperative deal with CSX. Also, of course, I think the market was naturally going to that place when it came to an activist investor in CSX. You have, at least nominally, these companies in play. So you have one potential bidder, outright removed from that. So you have to take some of that premium back, and the stock's going back to where it was about a month and a half.
Yeah, well, I mean, Faber this morning on the air, I mean, we've done well to surround this thing between Becky and David. He reported reported this morning that no talks were being had either. So we continue to try and advance the ball, at least it pertains to that. That reporting, latest from Becky there, moving CSX down 3.75%. So that's an interesting one. You want to finish your
It's
thought?
only about, I was just going to say, I mean, you know, it's like a $62 billion market cap right now. I mean, it's a small number
for the mountain, that Berkshire's sitting on of cash.
Exactly. And, you know, they're in the market for big deals, but it doesn't seem as if this is the particular area where they want to, you know, necessarily get messy with that. All right.